Welcome to Automation Ladies. I'm your host, Nikki Gonzalez, if you've never joined us before. And my co-host, Courtney Fernandez.
Hello.
And our guest today, Ryan Treece. Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself and tell our audience who you are and how you got to be doing what you're doing right now with FreeWave. And that's new, relatively new to me, because I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get into that as well.
Yeah, Ryan Treece. I'm at FreeWave Technologies, Global Business Development Manager for our AI and data platforms. Prior to this, I worked at Keyence, Cognex, Telit, Banner Engineering, a bunch of the OT side of the house, doing predictive maintenance, machine vision, lots of factory floors, definitely. Also, I'm part of ISA, their smart manufacturing and IIoT division.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And so I'm doing the Edge and Cloud technical committee on that. So
I think we've had a couple, where Jessica Morell was on the show before. She was on that committee, I believe, at some point in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen Jessica at ISA stuff. Yeah. And then also nonprofit Industry 4.0 Club. We started that actually during COVID when everyone was online talking about how to do these digital transformations, Industry 4.0, all those buzzwords, right? So
yeah,
that's more of
our friend Ann Wyatt.
Yeah,
she was part of that as well.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, that's what I've been doing nowadays.
Very cool. Haven't you been helping Ann co-host some of her show or?
Yeah, we did a season together. Definitely, yeah.
Very cool. We should check that out. I don't actually listen to a lot of other podcasts. I definitely don't listen to my own. But I at some points I think I should. I like to catch up on sometimes when I drive. I think I might be driving to Austin in January or February for the Industrial Marketing Summit.
Oh.
And that's, I think, the last time I binged podcast was when I drove to Austin for that this year.
That's awesome. Well, I'll see you.
So you and Ann will have an entire season for my drive. I'm excited.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. I'll see you in Austin. I live in Austin, by the way, viewers. So I'm there now.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You've been there this whole time, or was that more recently?
I moved there, 3 or 4 years ago. OT Skatacon. I wear this hat almost every day.
Nice. So if you guys are listening on the podcast, he has the black hat with the pink lettering. Mm-hmm. I will have to say it was a great pick. Yeah. Thanks for representing.
Yeah, thanks. It was a great conference. I learned so much in such little time. I think I slept for 1 or 2 days afterwards. In a good way, though. It was a good way.
Fire hose.
Yeah, I liked it though, because most times you go to these types of conferences and stuff, and it's very long, boring, and then I'll get excited for 15-minute parts of these presentations. But this was you took all the good chunks and all the gems, and then you condensed it, and then you just fire hosed us. It was awesome.
That is exactly what we were trying to do. And Allie's mind is very much, she kind of thinks in lists in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And so she listed out the topics in the way that she sees them. It's sequenced in, the kind of OT world. And I've been on the other end of Allie info dump fire hose things before. And it's just, it's fascinating and it's incredible. And I can keep up with most of it. But then, when you're around the people that info dump on you like that enough, you don't have to get it all at once, but you do get enough to totally be excited. And then you get to know the people well enough to be able to actually
remember who did the info dumping so you can call
exactly
who did what exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
And where to reach them maybe. And that's something else that I think we are going to have to do a little bit better job of, was just kind of keeping everybody communicating. We're making it easier together. We had a lot in mind that we didn't get a chance to implement in terms of just time frame.
Are we going to see you again this year, Ryan?
Yeah, I hope so. I plan on seeing. Yeah, I hope this is an annual event. I really enjoyed it last year. So
it is, and we are actually, Allie's coming to Houston next week and to finalize our venue selection.
Awesome.
So we'll be probably sharing some stuff just as we're touring. We're going to a few different places, and then it'll be exciting to kind of just keep showing it as we're building it, I guess, sharing it with the community, because we're also getting a lot of input from the people that are coming. And we have a new feature on the site. So when you buy a ticket, we're not just featuring the speakers, we're featuring everybody that's coming.
Oh, that's cool.
Because there's so much value in the people, the difference, some people are coming that are really novice at everything. But the majority of people are very much experts in their field and then not so expert in the adjacent things. And that's what a lot of the value is in meeting those other people. So, but the people that are speaking versus the people that are attending, I would say a lot of our attendees would be qualified enough to also be speakers. There's just not enough room on the lineup for everybody, right? So thinking about why do people go to educational conferences even? Part of it is to add, of course, it's to be educated. It's to add to your network. It's to somehow add value to your daily work, right? Ideally, or your strategic direction. But then it's also about building out your career, your profile, your skills. So why not let people get a chance to have their personal brand out there, even if they're just attending? Like, it's a big deal. Some people pay for this with their own money and they take PTO. And I think that's well worth showing off.
Massive dedication.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And then trying to make the most of it in terms of networking and connection and value building beyond just the 2 days or whatever. Yeah, Ryan, I know that you had some topics that you potentially wanted to talk about. So what do you got for us today, Ryan?
I think one of the first things we could talk about is how to get started in industrial IoT, Industry 4.0, kind of all these digital transformation projects. I think there's so many solutions out there and it gets overwhelming because you'll have some companies that are offering something like an AI or ML predictive process solution. Well, that can be tough if you don't know how your PLC is communicating or what metrics you want to monitor on your PLC. So if you don't know how to pull data from a PLC, you might have some trouble doing that. And I would recommend going kind of where your comfort zone is, right? So I think one of the easiest ones is probably predictive maintenance. You'll probably see predictive maintenance, vibration temperature monitoring. There's a lot of different solutions out there.
Yeah, that's become kind of bread and butter at this point, right? Those two modes of predictive maintenance.
I think of it, it's always so weird how when you drive your car, if you have a problem with your car, your check engine light comes on, right? You don't really see that in the factory when it comes to these motors. They just run them into the ground to the point of failure, and then everything's on fire. And they're like, okay, how do you get it up and running? How do we Band-Aid it? Can you get us through this shift? We're trying to order spare parts. So I think investing in something like a vibration temperature sensor, a lot of them have like magnetic mounting brackets. You can just pop it right on the side of the motor closest to the bearing or the point of failure. And then that's going to do the job for you. It'll monitor as that bearing wears. It's going to vibrate a little more. It'll just send you, depending on the system, it could send you an alert. It could automatically put it on your schedule for preventive maintenance over the weekend, different things like that. So I think that's always, if someone says, I have no idea where to get started, I would probably start there. And then
that's an easy one because you can do it with just you can start with literally one asset and then replicate it to maybe just get some value out of it before you have to do a whole big plan.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't take any coding experience, anything like that, right? So a lot of solutions will have some sort of dashboard that you can view data in. So you're not having to, build up this kind of logic. So a lot of the more comprehensive solutions are, okay, you have to inventory. If you're doing the whole line, a lot of times in the US, you're going to source by the lowest bidder for the project. And then you also have special machinery. So you could have a Siemens PLC on the machining station that was built in Germany, and then you could have a Rockwell PLC in the assembly station right after it, right? And so I think that's where a lot of people hit those bottlenecks with all these proprietary industrial protocols. Converting those definitely helps to have someone like Ignition, inductive automation doing that. But if you've never done it before, that can be a pretty daunting task for you.
Hey, I want to take a quick break from today's episode to mention our sponsor, Automate. It's coming up soon, and you have to be there. We're always there. It's going to be amazing. It's the biggest automation party of the year. You got robots, cobots, motion, vision tech, AI, you name it. All the cool stuff is going to be in one place for you to come see. Plus, lots of great companies and people to connect with, including us. So why don't you head over to automate.org, get your tickets, and we'll see you there. Have you seen specific applications or done any cool factory tours lately where you've been either talking about that kind of stuff or seeing some in action?
I haven't done much in the factory recently, but I've been, I guess you could say, in the cornfields lately, or the farms. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so FreeWave, we've traditionally been a 900 megahertz private wireless radio company. So we can transmit data up to 40, 60 miles, depending on the conditions there. So we run into a lot of applications for oil and gas we're pretty big on. But smart agriculture has been a fun one recently. And part of the problem that they're having is all of their machinery and equipment is in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
right? And the most remote areas to have that kind of real estate to do the farming. So they're not only having issues with, okay, what kind of data are we pulling? And then which assets do we want to monitor? They're trying to think, how do we even get that back to our cloud? Because there's no cell tower connectivity. So it's always going to be a combination of cellular or satellite in that case. Satellite's still pretty expensive, but I think if you look at like a remote asset, you're going to have a few different boxes on it no matter what. So if you have a global solution going in remote areas, you're probably juggling multiple wireless carriers or MVNOs to try and get the coverage areas in these different places. So that's multiple cellular, probably one or two different dedicated boxes for satellite solutions. You're probably having something hosting like the actual AI or predictive maintenance solution itself. So some kind of industrialized gateway there. And then also a lot of times you'll see like an EWAN box by HMS just for secure remote VPN, right?
Yep.
So if you start adding this up, right, here's single functionality little boxes. You have 4 or 5 boxes that go out on every machine and all these different combinations. So that's what we've been working away at on FreeWave for probably the past 6 months that I've been here, is how do we make that easier for everyone to deploy and manage and things like that.
So yeah, how do you guys do that?
Good question. We're still figuring a lot of it out, right?
Okay.
So I think part of it is we're noticing challenges. Like we've had customers who have LoRaWAN in the field, and they're seeing the actual crops are causing noise with the RF antennas. So so we're helping. That can be some antenna issues. We'll look at that. We partner with a company called Velocity IoT, and they have a group of companies that they work with globally so that you can remotely manage it via a web portal. So you can activate, deactivate, all that just clicking through the web portal, and it can show you kind of a map of that stuff. So I think that's been a lot of what we're doing there, is just even consolidating the amount of cell phone carriers people are using. And then on the satellite side, we've worked with Viasat, and we'll actually take like a Modbus based sensor, or we'll convert like an analog sensor to Modbus and connect directly to the satellite terminal. So you're not having to have that piece of IO in between like a PLC, or we're removing the cost there. So we're really trying to consolidate how many boxes you have to buy, manage, and deploy out there.
Yeah, that seems like a good move. And I'm assuming that there's a pretty decent market for that, because I've actually been, my first job as an intern for my dad's company was when I was in middle school. My very first summer was to take the the spec sheets of a satellite receiver for Inmarsat, and my dad's GPRS box and controller that he had built for his system. So it was a dual GPRS and satellite system that for tracking trucks and boats and barges and things like that. So it was called Mobile Resource Management at that time. And he would stick those on whatever, the trucks mostly, because a lot of, you don't have cell coverage. It's definitely not reliable. You're going to lose your assets and have no idea what's going on with them. And then you start pinging those satellites. But the satellite receiver was like, it was a hefty thing. I'm sure they're a lot smaller now, but still you end up with a lot of hardware. And then and that stuff's been around, installed now for a long time. So people that were, I don't know, you would call it maybe early adopters of these things, right? But they've been using them for like 10, 15 years. They have a lot of this legacy equipment, and it works, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. I was just thinking of like Elon Musk's rocket, like how it's
I was actually just thinking, is anybody doing this with the Starlink satellites that you know of? I'm just curious about that getting cheaper, more accessible with Starlink being a thing now.
I've been tweeting Elon. It's funny you say that. Like the past week, I see Elon tweeting about all the Starlink. And I'm like, hey, if you need someone on the industrial side, we're doing stuff with satellite and remote assets. I haven't gotten a response, but I don't. Yeah, I'm not seeing Starlink. I think they're more consumer focused and high speed remote access for enabling different countries and communities that are missing, which I think still you definitely need. But yeah, I think everything nowadays, if you looked at 5 years ago, companies with the ability to remote VPN even into equipment, it was pretty scarce.
Yep.
So I sold machinery for a company called CrossMafI for a few years, and our service department operated by customer calls Ryan, the salesperson, angry that production's down. Ryan apologizes a bunch of time, hangs up the phone, calls my service manager, begs him to get a body on a plane and fly them out there. Right. And that's, I mean, you're looking at a last minute plane ticket, you're looking at hotel, you're looking at hourly for that person or per day. Right. And that's not a great way to operate a business model, as opposed to, okay, here, let me pull my laptop out, remote in, look at the PLC registers, diagnose. And even if they can't fix it remotely, now when they go to fly there, they're more informed, right? They're able to see, okay, I'm going to bring this tool, I'm going to bring these different things, because if you don't know, you're flying blind. Even when we worked at Keyence, I felt like I was bringing you get the suitcases, right?
Yeah.
You bring everything in because you don't know what you're going to run into. And on the machine vision side, I need every lens. You can't bring every light, right? And
Right.
so, yeah, you kind of gotta have an informed decision before you go in there, and it's always helpful.
But yeah, that birthed my life's motto. The answer to everything is it depends.
It depends.
It depends, right?
So, how much does a vision system cost?
Ooh.
Oh,
varies widely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then I found you can't ask me a question that I can't find some, nuance to the answer to that, because it depends on the circumstances.
Well, you got to give like something, right? You're like, will it work? Well, how much will this cost? Well, like, are you just buying one to put it on your shelf? Like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah.
And part of me is like, well, I'm one of those people that I love, price transparency. I don't want to have to go through talking to 5 different people to get a price to buy something, and it's not like, so I guess it's conflicting in that sense, but doesn't mean that you can't like have some ideas. And some things are just concrete and other things are not, for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, Starlink is up and coming. I think they're doing a great job in remote areas, but they are really focused on that consumer. And I know like there's a lot of things that are different between IoT type connectivity that you need, the type of messaging, frequencies and amounts and things like that between like consumer and commercial use.
Well, my question was actually more on the reliability of the connection, because there's some customers that are like, this cannot go down.
Yeah. So then you have to have redundancy with because even satellites, even Starlink will have dead zones.
Yep.
And that's when they like line up in a certain way in the geography, and there may be mountains or whatever, but there can be like short snippets of time where they don't have coverage.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen that too, right? And just with any kind of infrastructure, you're going to have certain weather conditions that it might not be ideal for it. And so that combination is they have gateways now actually with cellular and satellite built into it. And then you can do an automatic failover, right? So if you want to go with cellular and have it run on cellular all the time, then if the local cell network gets too congested or goes down, fails over to satellite and vice versa. So yeah, it's getting easier.
Yeah, so I've kind of stayed away from these, that like having been in IoT for so long, like I kind of got tired of like it becoming all of a sudden a thing, and like it wasn't all of a sudden a thing, and then the industry 4.0 and stuff, and I just like, well, I don't know enough about it to say anything about it, so I'm going to kind of stay out of the fray and just focus on kind of what I know. But now it's like, okay, you can't really just ignore it anymore. And now that I'm focusing on more things towards the future, it's like how you can't look at the future and not be the part of it, right?
Yeah.
The data, the AI, the connectivity, as much as we want to keep in touch with and stay close to the ground, right? Which is why I think like the ethos of the OT SCADACon is kind of like, let's connect all the levels together somehow in a community. So it's not like insular echo chamber communities of people only on the same level.
Yeah.
But now I'm interested in this stuff like a little bit more. And so I think I want to have more conversations about them, and I'm more open to hearing about it. What's your kind of take on where we are with it in terms of, you've been around it for a long time too?
I think I think it's finally maturing, and I'm pretty optimistic. So, like I mentioned earlier, with the remote machine connectivity, right? I think that you see a ton of startups that started in 2020, and I think a lot of those went away. All the hype ones, all the we got seed money, we're going to find this. But I'm seeing a lot more people who have a core business product, whether you're a machine builder or an insulin pump manufacturer. A lot of people, it's becoming much easier to have the tools to build a remote cloud system, integrated sensors, and things like that. So I think it's going to kind of continue to take off over the next probably 4 to 5 years, and we're going to have a even more connected kind of industry here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the flip side, that terrifies us all is the cybersecurity.
Yeah.
like the casino that got hacked through their aquarium sensor.
Yeah, that's another big thing we've been looking at, actually. So VPNs, awesome for the use case I said, right? Remote service. But the problem with a VPN is you build a castle wall, and then once you're inside that castle, you get the VPN credentials, you can move around really easily. So something I've been learning about more, and I'm not an expert on it by any means yet. Zero trust architecture is something that I've been learning a lot about. And that gives you what they call least privileged access, I think it is. So basically you have no permissions, right? So you can't even see the assets when you're on the network with zero trust. You can't scan, you can't port scan, you can't do anything like that. So it's a software solution that verifies the transactions and interconnectivity once you're on the network still. And so I think that is going to be huge, actually. The DoD has, I think, is that mandate, actually. They gave some reference architecture and things like that. There's documentation online. But yeah, because you'll see them go in through a legacy sensor or something that people probably forgot about, right? Like you said, an aquarium sensor. So there's these legacy systems that people completely forget about. They do this one simple task off to the side, and they don't pay attention to it because it does its thing. And I think that's the biggest vulnerability in these places.
Yeah, I've been trying to think whether, because there's a lot of attack vectors that are just not even about the technology either. So it's kind of like a lose-lose or situation. Like you just got to move on with it because you're not going to stay safe by not connecting, anything. But at the same time, you have to figure out how to do it and minimize your risk because there's just always going to be that risk. So don't assume that you can be safe. So have all of your, to quote badly our cybersecurity speaker, Ashley Van Hosen, there are two types of companies, ones that have been hacked or ones that will get hacked. So you better have an OT specific incident response plan to make sure that you know what you're going to do when it does happen, and not just from your finance and accounting and, your operations standpoint or your other stuff, but your OT stuff. So how do you keep your line running? Okay. So we have some questions from the audience. This is cool. Lou asks, where can you find success stories or example of where Industry 4.0 has shown value other than the obvious Google search? Yeah. Any suggestions?
Google's too good. How am I supposed to outdo Google? I'm going to get better than Google. How am I going to outdo Google? Lou, you're setting me up for failure, man. It's good to see you. I think it's going to be if you want something outside of predictive maintenance, process predictive, things like that, it's really going to be tailored to your business model and your process. I've gone into tons of automotive factories, and someone making a front bumper on this assembly line is making it completely different than maybe the plant next door, right? So I think the key thing is understanding what kind of those metrics are important to your individual process, and then finding a way to just monitor those and provide that actionable item there. So it's tough to outdo Google, but if there's a lot of it is just monitoring data points and then sending alerts and automating that part of it.
Yeah, that's a good question, though. I think, we've been talking about this a lot lately in a lot of different conversations that I've had. It's just really challenging to get case studies in our industry because so much stuff is under NDA and every company considers what they're doing a competitive advantage. And so us as solution, and I say us, right now I identify myself as a systems integrator with PCE, but it's hard to be able to talk about what we do while not sharing too much, while making, useful information for other people. Like it's a real challenge. So maybe places like ISA presentations, like, do they have real case studies that they ever talk about or share, or like these kind of industry groups? I'm sure like that there are some that have like actionable case studies available, but maybe we'll try to do some research and drop a few links or something.
I know manufacturers are usually happy to publish case
Yeah.
studies on their own websites. So if you know a manufacturer of an IIoT product.
Oh, you mean the manufacturer as in,
like the manufacturer of the IIoT devices.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking
yeah.
like UR has case studies on people who use UR robots. So if you're
Yeah.
using an IIoT device, that
Yeah.
company might have a case study on people that have done so successfully.
Yeah.
I haven't looked myself though.
Okay, I'm having some ideas here. If there isn't really a good place for curated case studies, just across manufacturers, like not to have to go to individual websites for that. Okay.
Yeah. Most of the ISA stuff is a good resource too.
Yep.
They have like a monthly magazine that goes out in Tech Magazine, and actually that's another great reason to get involved with ISA. So I think it's a little over $100 a year. So it's not a huge financial commitment, but once I started and then attending the meetings, we do share information on use cases. There's opportunities to volunteer on all these different subcommittees as well within ISA. So there's a cybersecurity portion, there's an edge and cloud computing portion, there's all these different buckets, right? And part of it is that information sharing. So some groups will do it better than others. And then there's a lot of process industries and not as much discrete manufacturing in there. But yeah, it's been a really great organization to join. And I think that's something we mentioned kind of in the show notes, is how to get involved and how to do that. And I think that's really where all my speaking and the articles and stuff took off was through ISA.
Cool. Yeah, I know our friend Scott Chapman, another one of the speakers from OT-SCADACon, who actually spoke about predictive maintenance. I think he's part of the ISA chapter, like instrumentation, and it's a little far for me to go, so I haven't been to one of their events, but it looks cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of concentrated, like which groups are active by what industries are active in different areas, right? Because there's a lot of different sub-chapters and things like that.
Yeah, you have like your local chapter. So I'm part of our Blue Bonnet, they call it, local chapter in Austin. And so they'll have local meetings and things like that. And then there's different high level parts of it, like the process instrumentation group. And then we're part of the smart manufacturing and IIoT. So you can be part of multiple groups and attend multiple meetings. It's pretty easy to float around there.
Yeah, very cool. I've been a member probably since maybe for 2 years, but I just had not like prioritized the time to get involved. Like there's so many different communities and organizations to get value from in the industry, but it's just like, obviously you can't be part of them all. And if they cost money, you can't pay for them all, but it's more of a time thing, even just like committing to being in these different places. And it's helpful to kind of, keep some consistency and get to know people in one place, because you won't get everything from one visit or one webinar or whatever. What's kind of your favorite format right now? Is it still webinars that you like to go to learn, or do you really just want to read the case studies like on a website or a PDF or something? Because I think that's kind of, a lot of people are trying to do like more interactive stuff and more media, but I don't know if people really want that, or if they just want the plain old like magazine article or 3-page or like with just like the nuts and bolts of the application.
What do you two prefer?
I like case studies.
I haven't been looking for solutions for a long time, so I don't think my opinion is necessarily valid in that sense.
What, Courtney, I think you said like case studies and white papers?
Yeah. Well, mostly because I could go at my pace through those, where webinars, I think there's lots of studies that show that we can like read and write much faster than we can hear and talk. So I tend to be going a mile a minute and faster than my mouth and my brain can keep up with things. So webinars, I end up clicking through to the parts that I want to see, and I know I'm missing stuff. And case studies, I just jump right to what I care about reading.
Yeah, I see. I can't sit still long enough to read something, so I need like the shortened social media 2-minute video to get me excited.
Nice.
and to prime the brain, and then I'll deep dive read one of those case studies, right? Because Yeah, I can't. Same thing with a lot of the webinars and stuff. It's like click, skip, skip, skip. Okay, I think I heard something there.
Yeah.
It is hard, obviously, because like you don't know what each person's going to be looking for. But one of the things that bugs me about webinars is when there's like way too much sales speak before you get to the what you web advertised as the topic of the webinar.
Yeah.
So I appreciate like when people kind of get to the point of what they're talking about. But I also over talk before all of my stuff, so I like can't really be as mad about that. But yeah, one of the reasons we started to do live demos is because I do like to see, like, I don't know, be able to have this back and forth with someone sometimes, but you don't want it to be like, I don't know, like a high pressure sales thing. Live interaction is where it's at. Yeah, that's cool. Like kind of like this maybe. Kiss my own
trade show demos.
Yeah, interact like trade show demos, because when you got the thing, so that's cool to see the tech. And I still love like demo vans and trucks. I love that companies put those together.
Oh, I love those.
Like, with all their stuff, and then bring them to you, and you can just go like touch all the things.
It's toys for adults is what it is, right? You see one of those big distributor vans or RVs, and it's all the lights are spinning, all the buzzers.
Yeah, that's cool for certain things, right? But for the actual like case studies, like let me see how someone else got value out of this, and if it's something that I could potentially replicate. Because as much as it is cool that things spin and they have lights and buttons and stuff, if you don't get an ROI out of that, then you've just spent money on a lot of shiny, flashy things.
Well, that's why I like proof of concepts and case studies, because people are very likely to look at something and go, hey, my part is that, or my part looks like that. And yeah, if you see it being, happening, you're like, it can happen. I can actually spend money and get a result.
Yeah. Ooh, back in our Keyence days, Ryan, we had those catalogs with sample applications, and it would show the little pictures of like the process on the line, which was super cool. Yeah. In your territory, did you ever actually see those applications?
Never.
Okay, not me neither.
They had, well, you were West Coast, weren't you?
Yeah. And so I always had something that I had to basically like write a white paper on, because the only people that came to me were like, well, I tried this with everything else and it didn't work. Can you do it? And it was sometimes, it was real hit or miss whether it was even possible at the time with machine vision. And like, of course, the catalog was like,
nobody ever brought you their 80%er. They always brought you their really messed up 20%er.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is good. Like, oh, the O-ring inspection. Yeah, that looks really straightforward. And I'm like, wait, nobody in my territory makes O-rings. And if they did, they probably are already inspecting them with something else.
Right. Yeah, even in automotive, I felt like a lot of those application guides like were showing like picture of an engine block and just a camera pointing at it, and I'm like, okay, but what? Like, yeah, I
what
was
are we
like,
talking about? People like say something real. Don't just say the words, but you're not actually saying anything. Not to criticize those catalogs; they were very informative.
It's hard. That's hard.
But you can't, like, from the sales standpoint, you just can't speak to it to the value like a case study can, that actually shows like this is a thing that was actually done, not our idea of what like the application looks like before it goes out in the wild.
Yeah, if I'm looking at like a network architecture, I don't want to hear someone on a podcast talking their way through a network architecture while I try to build it in my brain, right? I can try it, but yeah.
You go to Traceroute and read Josh Varghese' blogs, because he lays it out. He's got like pictures.
Yeah, I like his content. I've seen his stuff on LinkedIn.
Yeah. But yeah, there's different forms of content for different things. So the answer to that is it depends. Oh, we've got
made by an application engineer too, because some of the companies have applications engineers dedicating like 20% of their time to making videos or white paper docs on how to use things. But that's a great practice, and I think all of them should do that. Like, you need to go update your YouTube videos. I have rescued myself on multiple projects with a 5-year-old YouTube video with an applications engineer that's not even with the company anymore. But, that kind of video has rescued me. And I
honestly, and I think brands have short sold the value of that type of content, because it is evergreen. If you can think about anything that, it's not going to be flashy and get millions of views when it comes out. It's just going to be one of those like handy, sturdy things that, like people that used to look in the manual, now people Google and YouTube, and it's like you want them to find a how-to or this, thing for your, even if it's like, a couple models old. But again, ideally you keep it up to date and you produce fresh, as often as you decide that you need to upgrade your product. You should decide to try to upgrade some of this material.
Yeah, the menus have moved around since this video, but the option is still there somewhere.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to do it themselves, right? They don't want to go through the support. They don't want to do this back and forth. They don't want to go through this troubleshooting tree with someone. Yeah, they'd rather look at a YouTube video, skip to where it is, and then watch, okay, they clicked there, there, and there. Where are those menu buttons on my screen now? I always appreciate
why
that.
is mine gray? That's always my favorite.
Yeah.
I really want to encourage.
How come his isn't gray?
All the engineers out there, that if you've ever felt the itch at all to produce something that would be valuable to other people on a mass scale, rather than just one-to-one with your customers, which is, I know where you're comfortable and you provide so much value to those customers or your sales folks or your internal customers, right? That it would just it would be so cool for the industry to get that one-on-one value out to the rest of us, even if we weren't so lucky as to meet you face to face and get your help. It is actually something that back 3 jobs ago, I was trying to get people to do as a salesperson, because I wanted to not have to bother a sales engineer and get their time and get something booked just to get a quick question answered that I knew that they had already answered for someone else before, by showing them how to do it in the software, right? But I understand it took me a really long time to feel comfortable doing this. So not everybody wants to be out there, but dude, just don't even worry about it. So Ryan, when we first talked or reconnected after finding each other on LinkedIn and realizing that, we had worked together at Keyence, you had a journey. We connected on a lot of things. And I think our friend Jim Mayer with the Manufacturing Culture podcast may or may not have been brought up, because I think we both had conversations with him as well. How is your career progressing as you see it, in terms of the company culture and the growth, your maturity in your career? Are you seeing big changes? Or
Yeah, it's been fun. I've always just tried to learn as much as I can at every company I've had. I think that's been kind of my passion. And I always say I'm a terrible salesperson, but I'm more of a teacher, right? So I'll talk to the engineers and I always ask why. Why isn't this working? Because the customer's asking me why. Why isn't it working? No, that's not a real answer. Why is it really not working? Right. And so I think I've done that over the years as much, and I've just continued to focus on sharing that information with people. But not all companies like that, right? Yeah. And I think that was tough earlier on in my career, to where I wanted to kind of be part of it, do more, join the ISA and do these speaking panels. But maybe the response was, oh, you can't do that. We have to have a director do that, right? Or something like that.
Or how does it help you meet your sales goal today?
Yeah, exactly. Is this going to help you hit goal? Maybe. I don't know. Is anything going to help me hit goal? I mean, everything's a guess, right? And so, I think now in the interview process, one thing I start doing is I tell them, I say, hey, I'm part of a nonprofit. I go to these industries. I do the speaking. Sometimes I might write an article. Is that okay with you? Right? I'll flat out ask and get permission up front.
Yeah.
And then if the answer is no, it's usually a pretty good indicator of their company culture as well for me. I don't do well in very strict command and control, don't ask questions, right? I like to know, okay, maybe if there's an internal process that's not optimized, how can we fix this, right? And I think I've gravitated kind of more towards those companies as my career's progressed. And I've been very fortunate to have some great supportive bosses I found along the way, including at FreeWave. They've been awesome to work with.
Very cool to hear. Yeah. I think I also, when I first joined, I was hoping to have one of those careers where you kind of work at the same company a long time. I wanted stability, I thought, but I found out that wasn't realistic. So now it's okay, how can we add the most amount of value to each other while we're together? Because we both know it's not going to be forever.
Right.
And it's why not just be honest about that now and plan for that, instead of, I've had people, or, people that don't talk to me after I quit a job. Because they were upset that I left. And it's well, okay. And then I have seen companies now that have policies that are literally hey, if you're going to leave, we'll pay you extra for the last month, and just make sure we do a great handoff. And, hopefully if we really like to, we might see you again later after you've gone and grown and flown. And like when you onboard somebody that used to work for you, there's so much that you can shortcut to that I don't see why companies don't see that kind of thing as more of an asset nowadays. Like just being able to be a little bit more realistic with people than command and control, like you said it.
Well, I think it's very short-sighted, right? Because if you let someone come back, then there's this like insecurity that maybe more people will leave if they see we'll take them back. It's like a toxic relationship with the employer, right? And so it's very, I don't know, self-conscious. I don't know.
Yeah,
but you see
right.
these huge corporations having these policies, right? And I like how you mentioned when I leave a company, I think that's part of a huge indicator of I have people that genuinely reach out and it was awesome working with you. Best of luck. Because I always try to support people. I don't support companies, right? And so when I'm working with someone,
customers also like follow the people.
Exactly.
In our industry, especially like controls people, salespeople, like I don't know how many customers I've sold to for multiple companies just because they liked me and they wanted to know what I had for them at any given time.
We were just talking about this.
Yeah.
And trust me, I will continue to recommend my previous employers if I still believe in them, right? To those customers and then my new customers, right? If I happen to think that they could use what I used to sell or what my, former company used to do. Your employees are a huge like networking tool if they leave you. If you empower them to do that.
Yeah, and how you leave that is the biggest indicator, right? You could have an awesome company while you're there, and then if you're, on the way out, they're rude. That can kill. You're going to have more conversations openly about that company, and it's going to be viewed as less biased than the people who are currently working there, and their livelihood depends on the reputation of the company. And I don't think, I don't think that gets said enough. But I think that's another thing as you progress through your career, is you kind of find those people who support you. And I think I read something or heard something, and it's something along the lines of like, keep people in your network who will bring your name up in a room full of opportunities, right?
Yes.
And I always like finding specialists, for each of these different things in my network. And I almost always, if I run into a problem, like, you know what? Not me, but I have someone. You need to call her. You need to call him, right? Whoever that may be. But I also noticed a lot of people aren't doing that, right? It was almost always a one-way street. Or I would do that, and then I would hear like weird feedback from the customer or something, right? And so I think finding those people that you trust, that one, they know what they're doing, they're an honest salesperson, they're genuinely going to be there to help. When things get tough, they're going to go to the plant at 7:00 at night and sit there on the line and make sure it works and stand with them. Finding those type of people, and then making sure that, I don't know, you have the right network that you keep there. But that's tough because it's just learned over time and experience, right?
Yeah. So shout out to Caitlin Young and Brett Young in Kansas City. They are the people you want to call if you ever have anything down in the middle of the night. They will come. They will be there. That has been vetted and verified by our network. We were just recording with Caitlin earlier, and like this literally came up. So I thought,
really,
we are, and now here we are in a room potentially full of opportunity. If anybody hears from Kansas City, we will personally vouch for them. So, and it's super important to be able to know good people, because you're right. Just any referral isn't just like, it could be a disaster if you refer people to someone that isn't going to be trustworthy or whatever. So it's important to kind of have a really good network of people you can trust around you. And in this industry, I think reputations do precede a lot of people, but it's hard because it's kind of siloed, right? We have these siloed networks. And so I've definitely interacted with people on a national scale that then when I talk to their local, like people in their local market, they're like, oh no, do not like stay away from that person or that company with the 10-foot pole because their local reputation is terrible.
Yeah.
And that sort of stuff is like, now that we have the age of the internet, it's great, but you also like that personal, knowledge of someone is important too. And I don't know what that balance is, but other than just trying to get to know people, there's always a risk. But I think, you can kind of, once you've been around people a few times or seen or heard from other people that have worked with them, you can get a feel for And then just a lot of people have like, they've been in the industry for decades at different companies. And like you said, people, once they leave, once that relationship is severed, somebody is going to talk, and you either hear the good things or you hear the bad things.
We used to say that's the difference between having a brand ambassador or having a brand assassin when people leave. And I've actually, in the last 2 years, I've seen it go both ways. Like I worked for UR in 2021, and it was like I had a great experience there, and I don't work for them anymore, but I still speak very highly of them. I consider myself a brand ambassador. And I've seen another company that just like did people so dirty that not only will I not like recommend your product, talk about your product, integrate your product, I won't do business with you like at all. Yeah. Not the employees of the company. Like there's some employees of the company I'll still talk to, but the company as a whole, like all these employees have bad things to say about having worked for them. And that stuff is detrimental in our industry.
Oh yeah, and people do talk even though they don't do so publicly because nobody wants to be sued or anything like that. Somebody on our team received a request to take down one of our posts a while back. We didn't actually violate anything, but it was their opinion that we may not be clear about certain thing and that they request that we like take it down. So even just saying something where we even like in the post made clear the thing that it could have been potentially that it wasn't that, but So everybody, I know, guards just like the NDAs with the case studies, right? It's like people don't want to take on the liability of saying something wrong, of being criticized, or of somebody like talking bad about you back. So it's just important to have people that you do know that you can trust, that you can privately talk to kind of suss out maybe if you're trying to do a big deal or you're looking at locking in with a big vendor or something. Just ask a few people that you trust that maybe have experience with that. That can always go a long way as well. Because now we live in the age of like, there's so many choices for everything. There's great choices for everything, and everybody's marketing material says they're the best at it. So how do you really know? And sometimes it's just what works best for you because your integrator's used to it. I mean, that sounds like a terrible thing, but it's actually not. It's like the cost of implementing is also a huge part of the project. The cost of support, maintenance, implementation. So like I know like my dad, he does some things the same way that he's been doing it for 10 years. And it's like it may not be the most effective way right now, but it's a lot faster for him to do it that way than to learn a new way to do it. And if the old way still works and they're still maintaining that framework and they're still, all that stuff, then that's actually the most cost-effective way of doing it. Yeah. Because of the situation. But Ryan, where can people follow you? Where should people get in touch with you or your company if they want to learn more about what you do or your solutions or any of that? Plug what you want right now. And then where can people expect to see or anything that they should expect to see like coming up from you? So shows or things you're excited about that other people might get excited about as well.
Ooh, good question. So follow me on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'm pretty responsive on there. FreeWave.com, we have a lot of good documentation for some newer stuff. We're doing a good job updating that. And keep an eye out. We have some new hardware coming out. We have a lot of stuff in the R&D pipeline that's going to hit in the next 6 months. And so I can't talk about a lot of it, but I promise it's going to make everyone's lives easier and more simplified.
So thank you everybody for joining us. Maybe see you next week. And I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday and rock the rest of the week.
Thanks.